I didn't realize that we had doubled the trip until we were already on the water.
I think we're not going so fast. I don't think we're doing our 7 kilometers an hour anymore.
My reaction at first was like, what? How long is this gonna take? When will I be home? My mom's gonna be sending a search and rescue any day now. But then I was like, this is really cool. We get to see so much more of our own backyard that I'd never get the chance to see any other time.
The Indian River is this little-known river south of Dawson in the heart of the Hunker Goldfields. We were meant to start our trip at Quartz Creek, which is about 50 kilometers upstream from where the Indian River flows into the Yukon River. But then there was this mishap and we ended up getting dropped off near Sulphur Creek, which is almost 100 kilometers upstream of the Yukon River. So we found ourselves on this section of river that almost nobody ever paddles and witnessing things that I've never seen before on a river trip.
This river has the most drastic changes in landscape that I've seen on many of the Yukon rivers that I've paddled. The start was huge meanders, really old, slow river with black spruce on the side and marshes. Tons of sweepers, lots of log jams. They can be really dangerous because when you paddle downstream, if there's current going into them, a person or a canoe will get stuck in the branches and the water rushing under can flip the boat and that can put people in a really dangerous spot.
We hit a lot of sweepers on our first day. Well, we were chatting and I think we kind of thought maybe close to 30 or 25 on the first day, but I don't know.
There was a few that were like more complex and maybe like 10 or 20 trees jamming up across the river. So that involved ferrying from one side to the other, lining boats down through a lot of other fallen trees.
Okay, we're gonna get to some sticky mud. Yeah. Okay, now this one do it quick. Ready? Yeah.
When we were learning about sweepers, I was a little bit nervous, but then when we got to our first one, it was okay. And then after that, we have like a really good team going. So we all just kind of knew what to do.
Yeah, we did it.
It wasn't a fast current, but it was fast enough to not know it's coming around the corner and be a little bit worried about it. So we were paddling and I was getting a little tired, so I didn't really make that much noise. And then we turned around a corner and then there was a moose right there. And I was so happy when I finally got to see my moose. And we were slowly like back paddling. I froze up a bit and then he looked me dead in the eye and he started grunting, stomping the water. And I thought that moose was gonna charge me. NATALJA was holding my hand while I was leaning back and MCKIM was coming in with the camera. And then we had to paddle forward towards the moose because MCKIM lost his paddle. And then the moose ran away.
I was just at peace. I was listening to the water, the birds, the sound of my paddle going in, and then looking around and seeing the light reflections and the trees overhanging and the roots coming out.
Some corners you'll forget where you are and it was really lush and beautiful and you got to see lots of wildlife. But then you'll hear in a distance there'll be motors and then you'll come across some dredges and then you're like, oh right, I'm back in Hunker.
I'm used to paddling these remote wilderness rivers where you're surrounded by glaciers and peaks, and it was so, bizarre to be in a forest, but then hearing the sounds of machinery And this constant reminder that even though you couldn't always see the mines from the water level, you knew that you were never truly alone.
When you couldn't hear equipment or mining in the area, it was more of a natural flowing river and not as many crazy trees falling down or big sweepers. But then when we got into pretty heavily active mine sites, you could see how the river has to maneuver around all of the new ground being pushed into it.
That's where the river was the hardest to predict, because it was obvious that the river was cutting new channels, and when rivers are still eroding and cutting really new channels, there's a lot more new trees falling in unexpected places.
And then that's when we'd run into pretty hairy situations where we'd have to get out of our canoes and figure out exactly how we're gonna get down the river safely.
Before I started learning about placer mining, I used to just think it was kind of like back in the gold rush where you take your little like pan and you kind of go down and swish a little bit of dirt around. But then like when you start looking at the bigger picture, it's way more than that.
It's happening on this huge industrial scale, spreading out almost as far as the eye can see, filling up valley bottom after valley bottom, consuming these ancient wetlands that take millennia to be formed but can be lost forever when they're dug up in search of gold.
It's pretty interesting, the group of people we have right now, because at least half of us have family attachments or some backgrounds in the mining industry. We understand how important it is for the Yukon, but at the same time we can appreciate the wilderness and the things that are kind of happening to it because of that. A lot of the stuff we saw was just pull out, piles of gravel. There was no reclamation work done. You know, it's one of those things that can give good miners a bad reputation because of what bad miners do.
For myself, I feel like I'm in a bit of an interesting position with my mom being Trunniquichin First Nation and then my dad being from BC, but he came up here to become a miner and he's now got a pretty big mine. I'm a little bit caught in the middle and having to sometimes choose sides when I don't feel like I really want to choose a side right now, like just kind of like being balanced in the middle. I do see the environmental impacts of mining. It's very obvious, especially with careless miners that come up from down south thinking that they can strike it rich and they don't, and then they leave a big mess.
Coming out on the river and seeing it firsthand, like it's not like these are like wastelands.
It's not overrun by gold fields. Like there was lush areas and areas of virgin ground, I guess you could say, like it hasn't been touched yet by miners.
Everything just felt like it was so resilient and all of the greenery just wanted to keep growing despite everything that was happening in that area.
The amount of wildlife that we saw, like 7 or 8 moose, 6 beavers, an otter, 2 bears, eagles, hawks, hearing tons of birdsong the entire way down. But then at the same time, the elders who came to send us off at the beginning of the trip were saying that there used to be salmon that ran up the Indian River, and the water used to be clear. But because of the mining, the river is so polluted with sediment that it's the color of like this cappuccino. And there are times when the river would carry us many, many kilometers away from the nearest mine, but the color of the river would still be with us as that constant reminder that we're in this landscape that's been so transformed by placer mining.
I really hope that there is going to be a change in some way. I'm not sure how yet, but from everything that I've seen and like all the animals that are living on that river and like how beautiful it actually is, I really hope that there's gonna be some sort of change.
The last half of the river opened right up and started straightening out.
The last maybe 50K was really continuous pools and then rapids, pools, rapids, a lot of just class 2, getting bigger and bigger volume. So the last, day and a half was really fun paddling as well. We were all really excited to finally make it to the Yukon, and it just looked like a big ocean almost. It's so wide here.
I haven't canoed a lot in my life, and I thought it was a really neat opportunity to canoe down the Indian River and learn a thing or two along the way. It's not what I expected, that's for sure.